Morning, everybody. How you doing? It's Thursday, pretty sure. Right, Ruben? It's Thursday today? I think so. Good. It's Thursday. So that means there'll be a new episode of the podcast up this afternoon. So once I'm done this video, I'll be getting to work editing a new podcast for you guys. And it is relevant to my topic this morning. I'll be talking all about emotions, anger, sadness, and fear specifically. In this context of coronavirus. So that hopefully will be a really great resource to some of you who are processing a lot of feelings. So I wanted to talk this morning here quickly about grief and sadness. The fact is, I think everybody is dealing with grief. I was texting with a friend yesterday and he said, I think the whole world is grieving, but not that many of us are talking about it. I'm thankful to be in a circle where a lot of people are talking about it, but I know in the wider media and society, no, there's not a lot of discussion around it. So let's talk briefly about grief and sadness. And if you want to do a deeper dive into this, then tune into the podcast later this afternoon. You'll find it on iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, wherever you get your podcasts. Just search for Jonathan Puddle or search for the Puddcast and you will find it. So grief, one of the best quotes I've ever heard on grief is from Martin Prechtel. Grief is praise because it is the natural way that love honors what it misses. Grief is praise because it is the natural way love honors what it misses. So the reality is, if you have loved anything, if you have embraced life, and then you've lost it, you're going to feel sad. That is what a healthy heart feels. Sadness is not pleasant to experience, but it's a really beautiful indicator that you've embraced life and that you have loved. And so as we consider grief, I think it helps to situate and anchor ourselves in love. Because I know grief doesn't feel nice. The experience of it isn't pleasant and joyful. It's not powerful like anger. It's not intriguing. It doesn't seem to lead anywhere good. But if you anchor yourself in love, start with a framework of love, that is where grief begins. There are generally said to be 5, or some people say 7, but let's just work with 5 stages of grief. You have denial, which is often accompanied with isolation, which is interesting, given the imposed physical distancing that's upon us, that self-imposed, that's good. But social isolation, I've heard people say, is really the wrong term, and I agree, it's totally the wrong term, because we desperately need to be not isolated emotionally and socially. So one of the stages of grief is isolation and denial. The next stage, not the next stage, but another stage is anger. I don't like this. I don't want it. Another stage is depression, and then bargaining, and finally acceptance. Now, it's important to know that these stages are not linear. They don't proceed in that order necessarily. You can enter into the grief process at pretty much any one of these different 5 points, and you'll likely loop around to the other ones. Grief, especially in really serious grief, like the loss of a loved one or a child, it doesn't go away. It's like the best way I've heard it described is like a stone maybe that you've put in your pocket or that you've hung around your neck. If you've got that stone in your pocket, sometimes it feels really big and really sharp, and you're going to bump into it, and you forget that it's there, and it hurts when you bump into it. But as life goes on, you carry it around with it, and it becomes more familiar to you. So the reality is long-term grief, you're going to move through these 5 different stages kind of all the time, kind of more fluidly at other times. You're going to feel a bit stuck at other times. And so the key to moving through your grief is to be present to it. I know that feels counterintuitive because you don't want to feel it. But the key is to be present to it. If you just stick into denial, I don't want to feel this, then that's only one aspect of grief, and you're going to stick there. And you can never move, you can never enjoy acceptance, you can never feel the powerful advocacy of anger, You'll never. But bargaining can be really helpful too, because while on the one hand it feels like I want to actually get myself out of this process, in bargaining oftentimes we actually come up with other interesting learning and discoveries about ourselves, which is really helpful to living a full life. Depression, fascinatingly, and oftentimes what we discover is when we sit with our depression and when we really dig into what depression feels like and what is underneath depression, what we find underneath depression is anger that's kind of like short-circuited. That depression is like the advocacy of anger, but that's then felt pointless and we've given up. Because anger in its ideal form is advocacy for your values, for your expectations. Sadness reveals what you hoped for, your loves that were lost, while anger reveals your expectations for what would happen or what didn't happen. And anger is essentially what we feel when there's been a blockage or a violation of ourselves or of loved ones. And so as you'll hear in this podcast I'm putting up today, in this coronavirus context, we're thrown into all of this. We are blocked from doing things we want to do. Our plans are violated. Everybody's travel plans, everybody's schedule, our hope that we would get to enjoy it, going to work or staying at home and being quiet, children being home, kind of being forced upon us. All of that breeds anger because it's not what we wanted. It's blockages. We've lost the valuable things that we love, the rhythms, the social engagement, the water cooler chat with your colleagues. We've genuinely experienced major losses. That's not even to get into the loss of death, of those ones who have genuinely, who have suffered and died, of the loss of our jobs, of the loss of financial security, and then the fear of this whole thing, right? Like, what's going to happen to me? What if I get sick? What if my children get sick, or my loved ones, or my parents get sick, and then I can't visit them because I'm not allowed to visit and travel? That's real. That stuff is real. And I totally get the temptation to deny it or to try and not feel it. But my encouragement to you is that we can't move through these stages and we can't come to peaceful acceptance. We can't really thrive and do well in this time if we're not present and we don't feel it and we don't engage it and we don't allow our heart to move through the stages. I know that's scary, but it's the best way to live. The likelihood is we are going to be affected in the immediate surrounding by this virus and disease. COVID is the disease and coronavirus is the virus. For a long time, 6 months, a year. Who knows? We don't know. But the quicker that we can move into adapting to it, the healthier and the more enjoyable our time is going to be. Now, I know when I say that, likelihood is a long time. I know that freaks you out because some of the ways we're dealing with it right now, we don't enjoy, right? Like sometimes our children are freaking out. We're freaking out. We're turning to bad coping mechanisms. There's shame associated with it. I'm not saying that your experience of COVID-19 right now has to continue. The truth is, your experience of this isolation and this disease doesn't have to continue for 6 months or for a year or for even a month or for even a few days. The experience can change. Whatever our realities are, we need to be present to them, feeling the full spectrum of emotion so that we can work through it. So let's just talk really, really fast. Denial and isolation. This is real, you guys. This is real. This is happening to you right now. You are experiencing trauma and tragedy because of this global virus pandemic. It is real. You were allowed to get angry about it. Your plans got all screwed up. This sucks. It totally sucks. And you're allowed to be angry and pissed off. Because your anger helps your heart feel like someone cares for it. So anger is good. Depression is also allowed. There are days where we feel like there's nothing we can do. What is the point? You're allowed to express that feeling. You're allowed to sit there. You're allowed to own it. You're also allowed to bargain with it. You're allowed to go, but if only I could, well, what I can do is I can jump on a Zoom call. Aha! Screw you, coronavirus. I can jump on Facebook Live and I can connect with my friends and I can work through this and come up with plans that make this feel more bearable, that make me feel powerful again. Do it. Go and do those things. And you're also allowed to go, yeah, well, this is the new normal. This is aspects of life now. We're never going to be the same. We are never going to be the same, you guys. This is so real. We don't even know what it's going to look like. But my prayer and my encouragement to you guys is that this can also be good. You can admit to the hardship and also find goodness in this. You can find goodness moment by moment. You can find goodness in your own heart, in your own presence, in the family around you, the friends around you. And if you're isolated and genuinely alone, you can find goodness in God, in His close presence, in yourself, in the goodness of your body, in books, in movies, in music, in projects, in learning new things, in language. There is so much goodness around us that we can tap into. May you embrace your grief, and may you embrace your sadness. May you know the beautiful truth that you only have grief and sadness because you have lived and because you have loved. May that be an anchoring point that brings you confidence and peaceful acceptance to dive into this process. Now, you want to go more into that and more into the emotions and what they mean, how they happen in the body, then jump onto the Puddcast in the next few hours. I'll have a brand new podcast episode up for you guys, talking all about your emotions, what they mean, how to deal with them, and how to meet with God in the midst of your emotions. So thank you for being with me today. We're going to keep going. We're going to be okay. My friend said to me last night in our small group at church, she said, I feel like I'm going through the 5 stages of grief every day. I'm like, yeah, that's real. You probably are. So grace and peace to you. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going.